If you want to learn what this Commission implementing regulation 2024/2690 is, then this video is for you. So I'll explain you how is this cybersecurity regulation related to NIS2 and which companies need to comply with it. Also, I'll explain you what are the 13 most important sections with this regulation. Then I'll show you how these sections look like and how they are related to ISO 27001 cybersecurity standard. And finally, I'll show you a couple of documents that can help you implement this Commission implementing regulation, or CIR. Okay, let's go through the basics first. So this Commission implementing regulation was published back in 2024. It was published by the European Union Commission, and the purpose is to define detailed cybersecurity measures that these digital infrastructure companies must comply with. And this CIR was published based on NIS2. NIS2 is a directive which is, I would say, rather general, and this NIS2 prescribes, I would say, minimum cybersecurity standards for critical infrastructure companies in European Union. However, since NIS2 does not prescribe the details, the EU Commission actually decided to publish this CIR as a way to define these exact details. Now, since NIS2 specifies that there are 18 sectors of critical infrastructure companies that need to comply with NIS2, there are actually two sectors within these 18 which are covered by this CIR. And these are digital infrastructure companies and digital providers. And in the description below, you'll find a link to an article which specifies in more detail exactly what types of companies actually fall under these two sectors. Now, if your company belongs to one of these two sectors, what you actually have to be careful about is that you have to comply with both this CIR 2690, but also with local laws and regulations that are published in particular countries in Europe where your company operates. And why is this so? Because CIR is actually pan-European. It covers all European countries, whereas local laws and regulations that are published based on NIS2, they're valid in each country, but they're valid for all the 18 sectors that are specified by NIS2. Okay, now let's see how this CIR is structured. It has this main part which basically describes how you actually define significant incidents, but I think that actually this annex of this CIR is much more interesting and it's actually much longer. It has a couple of dozen pages, whereas this main part is only 2 or 3 pages. Anyway, this annex specifies detailed cybersecurity rules for companies that need to comply with them, and these rules are divided in 13 sections. So let's go through all of these 13. Section 1 is about this top-level policy that needs to be written, and also about key roles and responsibilities that need to be defined within the company. Section 2 is about risk management policy. So basically this is where you define your risk assessment and treatment methodology, and where you actually start doing your risk assessment and treatment. Section 3 is about incident handling. So basically details on how you have to set up your incident response and other things. Section 4 is about business continuity and crisis management. So this is where you define your business impact analysis, business continuity plans, crisis management plan, and similar. Section 5 is about supply chain security. So this is where you define your supplier security policy and basically how you handle various types of suppliers and the supply chain. Section 6 is about secure acquisition, development and maintenance. So basically this is how you develop your own systems, but also how you purchase them and maintain them. Section 7 is about assessing the effectiveness of risk management measures. So basically this is about measuring and monitoring of your cybersecurity. Section 8 is about cybersecurity basic hygiene and training. So this is really about cybersecurity training and awareness. Section 9 is about cryptography. So basically this is how you set your encryption, your cryptographic keys and so on. Section 10 is about human resources security. So basically this is about hiring, signing agreements with your employees and so on. Section 11 is about access control. So basically this is about who decides who can actually get the access to what, and also what are the technical means of providing access to your systems. Section 12 is about asset management. So basically creating a register of all of your digital assets. And section 13 is about environmental and physical security. So how do you physically protect all of your devices and some other, let's say, assets that are important for your security. Okay, let me now show you how these sections look like. And by the way, in the description below this video, you'll find the link so that you you can open this CIR and actually read it through yourself. When you click this link, it will open this full text of CIR 2024-2690. This is on Advisera website, but it's exactly the same text as you will find on Eurolex's website. The difference is that you can easily navigate here, you know, the various articles. You can also search by certain keywords, these kind of things. Anyway, let's see what is the structure of this CIR. So you see several articles here. Most of them are about significant incidents. And then there is this annex, which is the most important part of this CIR. Okay, now let's see a little bit how these articles about significant incidents look like, and then I'll move on to the annex. Let's say this Article 3 about significant incidents. So it does provide here a definition of what this means. Let's go further, also about recurring incidents, and then it actually starts explaining what are significant incidents for particular industries. So for DNS service providers, then significant incidents for top-level domain name registries, and so on. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these. You can take a look at them yourself. Now, let's go for this annex. So let me click here and open the annex. And here now you will see the full text of annex. And as you will see, it's very detailed. So first section is about this policy of security of network and information systems. So this is a top-level policy, and it needs to include all of these elements here. So pretty much detailed, roles and responsibilities and so on. Now, let me scroll through this. I want to show you what are the requirements for suppliers and supply chain, because I'll show you later on this policy so that you actually get a feeling for it. Supply chain policy. So here you basically have, for example, you need to define the criteria to select and contract suppliers, and then you actually have a couple of criteria here. Then this annex specifies what the contracts must actually define when you sign the agreement with a particular supplier. So again, all of these are requirements for these contracts. And then there are some requirements monitoring, evaluating, overseeing these suppliers, and basically as part of it here are a couple of methods. You also have to define this directory of suppliers. So all of these things are mandatory according to CIR. Now, next section, this 6 security network and information system acquisition, development and maintenance. There are many things here. You can actually try to put all of them into one policy. Let me just show you what it includes. So security and acquisition of ICT services and ICT products, security development lifecycle, configuration management, change management, repairs and maintenance, security testing, security patch management, and so on. The other actually approach here would be that you have a couple of separate policies or procedures which regulate these areas. And what we did in Advisera when we built this NIS2 documentation toolkit, we actually separated, the policy for development, for software development, then a policy for, let's say, network security, as you can see here, section 6.7, and we also have a separate policy that handles vulnerabilities and patch management. So here you see this 6.6 about patch management, and you will see here in 6.10 vulnerability handling and disclosure. So I'll show you also this policy in a minute. But in any case, you can see also these other sections here in this Annex A. So pretty detailed, pretty much to take into account. Now, you might have noticed that many of these sections from this Annex of CIR are quite similar actually to ISO 27001, especially the older 2013 version where there were 14 sections in the Annex A. So the question here is this ISO 27001 actually enough for you to be fully compliant with this CIR? The answer is unfortunately no, because as you probably noticed, the CIR is much more detailed than ISO 27001. So ISO 27001 can be a very good, I would say, basis for building further details that are required by CIR, but 27001 in itself is not going to be enough. And for example, when we build our products in Advisera, products for NIS2, then we always take ISO 27001 as a basis and then read through carefully all the requirements for NIS2, let's say laws and regulations and CIR, and then build them on top of what ISO 27001 suggests. So again, 27001 is a very good base, but it's not enough. Okay, let me now show you a couple of documents and some examples on how you can adapt them actually for this Commission implementing regulation. Okay, I'm showing you now this incident handling policy template from Advisera's NIS2 documentation toolkit. So when you scroll down, you will see a table of contents, and here you have the section 2 reference documents. As you can see here, not only NIS2 is referred, but also CIR 2024-2690, articles 3 to 14, and then then several annexes here. Now, what I wanted to show you is how actually this significant incident is defined through this document, because as I've shown you earlier, this depends really on what type of a company you are. So first of all, here is the definition of a security incident if your company is not a digital infrastructure or digital services provider. So basically this is something that is used for these other, let's say, types of critical infrastructure companies. So basically the comment says here that you should delete this if your company is actually a digital infrastructure company. So basically this is here for non-digital providers. Now, what is more interesting is this part here, and this basically says that these definitions from A to F apply only if your company is a digital infrastructure provider. So basically says that you should use this text only if your company is one of the following: DNS service provider, TLD, registry, cloud computing service provider, and so on and so forth. And then if you remember from the text of the CIR, there are additional specific definitions for particular industries. So for example, this one here goes only if your company is a DNS service provider. So basically we inserted this text because this is defined so in this specific article from CIR. And then when we go further, you will see that this section here is used only if your company is a TLD name registry. So what is my point here? My point is that depending on your specific industry, you actually use a specific definition of the significant incident accordingly. So you insert what is relevant for you, and this is exactly how this template here is structured, so that very easily company can use the text that is appropriate for their specific industry. Of course, when you scroll down, you will see several other definitions for other industries and comments that actually guide you on what to use and what to delete from this text. Okay, let's see this supplier security policy now, and what kind of things are added in it because of the CIR. So when you scroll down, you will see again here the table of contents, the reference to CIR, and let's scroll down. For example, this criteria for selecting suppliers and partners, you will notice that all of these things from CIR are already covered here. But what is, let's say, more interesting here is this. As you can see, when signing agreements, you actually have to go and make sure that you follow all of these bullets. But you will see that this comment here says that this and the following bullets are mandatory according to the CIR, right? So if you are a digital infrastructure critical company, then you will basically have to use all of these bullets, whereas if you are not a digital company, then you will use only the first two. Okay, let's move forward and show you some other things. Yeah, so you need to have this directory of suppliers as well. Again, comment says that this is mandatory only if your company is a digital critical infrastructure company. So the point being here is that you should actually take your existing documents and add in them all of these things that the CIR requires. Now, in the previous two examples, I've shown you the documents that you already probably have, right? The incident handling policy, the supplier security policy. Typically companies already have these documents, and then you add into them the specifics for CIR. Whereas this document, vulnerability and patch management procedure, most companies usually do not have this kind of a document, but if you actually have to comply with the CIR, then this is something that you will probably write. As you can see here in this comment, it basically says that this document is mandatory only in case actually your company is a digital infrastructure company. So let's scroll down and see some details. So you can see here the table of contents. So this section 3 is about the sources for vulnerability and patch management, and then you have vulnerability management and patch management. So these sections are the main here. Of course, the reference here is to CIR points in Annex 6.6 and 6.10, and then goes the main part of the document about the sources for vulnerabilities and patch management, and then details of vulnerability assessment and of course patch management as well. So in general, this is how you can adapt your documents for CIR, or how you create new documents based on CIR. Okay, hope this was helpful, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions on CIR, and I'll answer as quick as I can. And to access these documents that I've shown you, click the link below in the description, where you can actually access and open a free demo account for NIS2 documentation toolkit, and there you will be actually able to download a free demo version of any documents from this toolkit. See also my next video that describes this ENISA's technical implementation guidance, which is basically a guidance on how to implement this Commission implementing regulation. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos, and I publish videos about cybersecurity, compliance and governance every week. Thanks for watching!